Quarantine, still happening. Movies. I watched some. I'll talk about some more. God, I'm so boring. One movie I rewatched was The Revenant, a film directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, the same director of Birdman, Amores Perros, and Babel, all of which are pretty fantastic movies that I recommend that you check out as soon as you can. The Revenant is unlike anything he's ever made, however. It's actually a revenge story taking inspiration from the true survival story of Hugh Glass. Keep in mind, I said takes inspiration, not a historical retelling of the actual events. In fact, it says it on the poster. It's just taking inspiration, because the real story of Hugh Glass was not a revenge story, whereas this is. So, just keep that in mind. Right out of the gate, this is one of my all-time favorite films, all-time favorite revenge stories, like top 20 favorite films. I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, with a lot of revenge stories, this movie is very brutal, but one of the things that makes this film stand out is just how brutal it is. This really wouldn't be that notable if Iñárritu's directing weren't so goddamn incredible. His choice to film the movie using only natural light makes the pulling off of these meticulous and incredibly well-shot action sequences all the more satisfying. I make no exaggeration when I say that the cinematography of this film is some of the best I have ever seen. The way Iñárritu uses long takes clearly communicates that he had no intention on slumming it with this film. They actually really went to these locations and filmed there, so these landscapes that would usually be CGI are all real. Some people have complained and said that it would have been easier to use a green screen, but I'm glad that Iñárritu has enough artistic integrity to come out and say that's exactly what he didn't want. The performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy are phenomenal, and this is definitely my favorite Tom Hardy performance. Will Poulter and Domhnall Gleeson were also fantastic, and I find that their performances aren't given enough attention. The music by Ryuichi Sakamoto was also amazing and really fit well with the scenes it was put in. Of course, there are tiny nitpicks I have, but not only do I barely notice them anymore, they don't in any way take away from the film. This is one of the most brutal films I have ever seen, and in terms of filmmaking, it's one of the most impressive. I'm sorry I didn't spend much time on this one. I'd rather leave it at just check it out, see for yourself, and you'll understand. I don't think it's any secret that I'll be giving this a 10 out of 10. Another movie I saw was an experimental horror sci-fi thing called Cube. This is a film where people are trapped in like this cube prison, and each room might have a trap that could kill them if they pick the wrong room. So obviously that adds a lot of tension right off the bat. I honestly really liked this movie, but its biggest problem was its inconsistency. The performances of the film were sometimes great, and sometimes they flat out sucked. The makeup and effects also looked good, but at other points they looked like something out of a crappy TV movie. What I really loved most about it was its creativity in its use of the traps. The gore and violence are entertaining, and the music is unique. It's well shot, and the production design is great. Again, what keeps this from being great is its inconsistency. There are just some things about it that I find incredibly distracting. It doesn't help that only like 2 of them were likable. The rest of them were assholes that I kind of wished would pick the wrong room and die, so yeah. I still enjoyed this film as like a fun popcorn movie, and I will likely watch it with friends next time. I dub thee a 6 out of 10. Next is Princess Mononoke, the famous anime by Hayao Miyazaki. This movie was awesome! An incredible animation marvel. You know the drill, it's a Miyazaki joint. What the fuck else do you expect? Every bit of landscape is breathtaking, the shots are amazing. I actually felt as if I were breathing in the mountain air. I also thought the music was incredible. There were some sequences that reminded me a lot of Lord of the Rings. The action sequences of this film are nearly at that level of entertaining. The sound design was also top tier, which added a whole nother layer of atmosphere. If I were to quibble, there may be 2 scenes that go a minute or 2 too long, but that did fuck all to affect my experience. It was a slicer, it was a dicer, it was a chicken fried ricer. And I just want to preface that I am not a guy who's easily into anime. It actually takes real effort, because I find them kind of over the top and cheesy and really dumb. But luckily, this anime was not only amazing, but I find myself consistently enjoying Miyazaki animes. So if I want to check out an anime that I most likely will love, I will check out something by Miyazaki. Even if you're not a huge anime fan like me, this still is a must-watch. It's just so amazing, especially if you love animation. I'm feeling a loose 9.5 on this one, and I say loose because it might change to a 10 upon a second viewing. I will have to see it a second time in order to confirm this, but yeah, let's just go with the 9.5. It is a top-tier animation marvel. Amazing. Up next is the famous war film Lawrence of Arabia, which I actually rewatched with my dad and my brother. This film is a 3.5-hour analysis into the story of T.E. Lawrence's exploits during the First World War. It's widely regarded as one of the best adventure/war movies ever made, and it clearly inspired movies like Indiana Jones. This is definitely not a film for those with short attention spans. It does require a large amount of patience, but if you think you have it, then do not miss this film. Honestly, to me, the movie is rarely boring. The first half especially is made with such monumentally impressive filmmaking. Some of the highest caliber performances and very ambitious filmmaking for the time are present here. The first half follows Lawrence's journey to unite the Arabian tribes, and the second half follows what they did once they were united. They're both tied together very well, so the pacing never breaks when transitioning. This is legitimately one of the most enormous films I have ever seen. So many ambitious shots corresponding with excellent direction, with sometimes hundreds of actors. I also find it kind of ironic that one of the most detailed and layered adventure stories takes place in the desert, which is mostly empty and dry. This film is also a shining example of why shooting on location is incredibly essential in some situations. Fun fact, while scouting out filming locations, the director, David Lean, actually came across the wreckage of a train that T.E. Lawrence himself had actually attacked. Being a history man, I did notice some inaccuracies, but also as a history man, I noticed that these people who made the movie obviously cared about the history behind the story and wanted to create a mostly true-to-heart story of what actually happened. And even though there are places here or there where I would have preferred they stuck to what really happened, I never felt that distracted or even that affected, especially upon a second viewing. I loved this movie to death, and I will be bestowing a 10 out of 10 upon this one. Next up, we have Europa, one of the earlier films by Danish filmmaker Lars von Trier. I have a very interesting relationship with this director, putting it very lightly. I honestly think he's one of the most unique, interesting directors out there right now, but he's also one of the most self-indulgent and egotistical. I certainly love Dancer in the Dark, Dogville, and Antichrist, but then he makes something like Melancholia and The House That Jack Built, which are both incredibly self-indulgent where it comes to the point that I can't even get through them without rolling my eyes 15 times. He also made the Nymphomaniac movies, which I really didn't like. I've come to the conclusion that his older stuff is what I'll tend to enjoy the most, so I was actually decently excited to check this one out. Out of all the films I've seen from him, this one is probably the most hypnotic. It's not meant to be as disturbing as Antichrist or The House That Jack Built, but it's also not to be as music-centric as Dancer in the Dark. If I'm being totally upfront, this might be one of the most, if not the most mature film that I've seen from Von Trier. It's patient and slowly enters your head, not unlike actual hypnosis. It doesn't even do anything outright explosive until maybe the final 15 minutes, and I appreciate it for that. It's very bizarre and out there with unconventional editing and sound design choices. It's got some truly fantastic cinematography and camera work with great music. It's definitely the most atmospheric film that I've seen in a while. I'm not entirely sure how to talk about this film because it's meant to be more of a dreamlike experience rather than a straightforward narrative. In fact, they work that dreamlike feel into the storytelling. It's not a perfect film, and there are some scenes that sort of drag on a little bit, and the second act could have been cut down, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more than Breaking the Waves and Dogville, but I'll have to see those again because it's been over a year since I've seen either of those. It's definitely a top 3 Von Trier contender for me, and I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Then I watched M, the famous crime story by German filmmaker Fritz Lang. I had only seen his silent film Metropolis up to this point, but I gotta tell you, man, M was something else. It's one of those movies that gets in your head. You want this murderer brought down just like everyone else. The biggest standouts in this film for me were the cinematography, performances, and set design. There's so much atmosphere that Lang brings to this project that even for the outdated 30s filmmaking, I still felt transported into this film. There's a shot that goes through a window, kind of like this one, and it goes through one of the squares. And obviously, being the 30s, they didn't have effects that would, like, you know, blend the shot in with the window. So it would have to actively move the window out of the way and continue the shot, and they did that. So obviously, these days I might consider that to be a little distracting, but obviously in the 30s they didn't have the effects to blend that in, so it doesn't bother me that much. And plus, even for that, when the window opens, you see it open, but the film continues with the long take, and that little hole is pretty tiny, so the camera has to be already small, and it still continues with a take after that. Innovative filmmaking like that is what made me enjoy this film so goddamn much. The use of long takes is great with a healthy variety of pans and zooms. The performances were so fantastic, with Peter Lorre giving me goosebumps every time he was on screen just based on his creepy presence. He gives off the feeling of that guy who just makes you feel uneasy. You don't know why, but you don't want him anywhere near you or your family. I absolutely love that half of the second act and the 3/4 of the third act are basically one big chase scene. The one thing about this film that may bother some people is that there are 2 scenes where a chunk of them are dead silent for about a minute and a half. No music, no sound. Even though there are cars and characters running around, they were intentional by the director's choice, but those moments felt a little weird. The reason it doesn't bother me much right now is because I don't see it bothering me on a second watch. So I'll just say that if you love crime stories, please don't let this one pass you. Despite it coming out in 1931, it was still one of the best crime stories I've seen in a very long time. Just trust me, I give it a 9 out of 10, and I seriously hope you check this one out. Also, check out Metropolis by the same director, because that was also an absolutely great film. Next is Pi, the directorial debut of Darren Aronofsky, the same guy who directed Mother, which would probably be in the top 30 of 2017 for me. And he also directed Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, which had been on my watch list for quite a long time. This was quite a bizarre film, and I don't want to share anything about the plot, because it's just one of those movies that you shouldn't have spoiled for you plot-wise going in. What really made it work for me was its tone and atmosphere. I bet you can tell by watching the footage that this film uses black and white a little differently than other films. There's clearly a lot of it that's hallucinogenic and not meant to be taken literally, but that just added to the paranoia-induced tone. The performances are all great, it's incredibly well written, it's surprisingly fast-paced, and there's a lot of it that's quite exciting to watch. It is a film that clearly can be interpreted, and there's quite a bit of it I don't understand, but I don't feel that I have to in order to appreciate or enjoy it. It's not a perfect movie, however. There's this track in the score that they play one too many times, and there are a couple of lines that I think could have been delivered better. But that doesn't at all hinder my experience. I still thought this was a great watch. It was definitely a great movie, and I honestly enjoyed it more than Mother. I know a lot of people might be mad at me about that, but I don't care. So I'll just give this an 8, maybe a little closer to a 7, but I'm sticking with an 8. And I do actually see myself enjoying it more upon rewatch. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Okay, and the final film I'll talk about today is Chinatown by that piece of shit fuckstick Roman Polanski. Yeah, I hate the guy, but I can't deny the fact that he's made some pretty fantastic movies like The Pianist and The Ghostwriter. If I were to compare this film to the other two, I think I'd put it in between. I like The Pianist more than this, but I think I like this more than The Ghostwriter. I don't know, I've seen those movies both twice, and I've only seen this once, so who knows? This is the story of a private investigator who unintentionally gets caught up in a huge scandal. Yeah, not exactly an original story, but since it's kind of an homage to classic film noir, I really don't mind. This is one of those films that took about 20 minutes to get me fully invested, but trust me, once it got there, the story took off like a rocket. The screenplay is absolutely fantastic, always keeping you on your toes. It's detailed and incredibly layered, which is what I come to expect from Polanski. Jack Nicholson gives probably his best performance. I don't know, I haven't seen The Shining in a while. It's well shot with great costume and set design. I really love how they captured pre-World War II Los Angeles. It honestly felt like something out of a Hitchcock film. Even upon a rewatch, I don't see the first 20 minutes being as uninvesting as they were. I'll probably enjoy them more, especially knowing what comes after. It's full of effort, and whoo boy, was that ending ever satisfying. It's entertaining, it's twisted, it's dark, it's Chinatown. Yeah, definitely give it a watch if you haven't. And I gave this one an 8.5, but I can see it changing to a 9. I am not entirely sure. Who knows? I still need to see it a second time, so 8.5. Okay, that's it. That's gonna be it. I don't really have much of an outro because I don't really have any announcements or anything. I don't have any big projects coming up, mainly because there's nothing really to work on. I think it might be a list video. I'm not entirely sure because I really don't want to work on anything huge right now, especially with the summer coming up. Actually, the summer might give me a reason to work on something big, so who knows. Anyway, I'll be making these videos every once in a little while. I'll keep watching movies in quarantine because I like watching movies. So yeah, if you want to see basically all the movies that I watch while in quarantine, or just in general, then I recommend you follow or just check out my Letterboxd account down below. It's okay. That's all I got. Have a great day. Bye-bye.